Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the DFS Report. Sorry for the delay. I'm an absolute idiot. Usually we use the same studio every single day, and for some reason I didn't use that studio today. Thought I did. So I was waiting for Zach in one studio. Zach was waiting for me in another studio. Neither one of us knew where each other were. It's a Wednesday. Anyways, welcome, man. We got a 4-game slate. Honestly, our start to the show feels very much like the slate we have tonight. Awful.
Yeah.
Pretty bad.
It does not feel great. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I think there's some interesting spots. I'm willing to get myself a little bit different here on this slate tonight. I think you're going to kind of have to break some of this chalk. But yeah, man, it's going to be a funky one, I think.
Yeah, not the best looking slate we've had this season. Does start at 7:30, which is nice. We get a little extra time to build lineups. Yesterday's show, like the first half of yesterday, couldn't have gone better. We absolutely crushed it. The second half of yesterday went super poorly. We did mention Montreal won as a reasonable option. I said more of a late slate play for me. Ended up being awesome. Washington, we weren't 100% sure how to target them. Turns out it was kind of just everybody, and especially Lexi Protas, who scored a hat trick. So, as I mentioned on yesterday's show during the hat trick pick challenge, if you make a hat trick pick and it's wrong, but nobody picks somebody who gets a hat trick, we will raffle off a $25 gift card to anybody who submitted a hat trick pick. So, unsurprisingly, nobody had Alexi Protas last night. We had 7 hat trick pick entries. So, before we get into today's show, let's give away a $25 gift card to one of the 7 hat trick pick entries, and it will go to Aaron Rasmus 3160. Congratulations, Aaron. I believe the second gift card he's won this season. So, Aaron, if you're in the chat or if you want to reach out to me in the Discord or on Twitter, that would be the best place to reach me, and we'll hook you up with that $25 gift card. Let's get into tonight's goaltenders. We got Peter Mrazek returning to the crease for the Detroit Red Wings. I tweeted out earlier today that it is the first time he has started for the Detroit Red Wings since February of 2018. It's been a long time. Henrik Zetterberg was still in the lineup. Justin Abdelkader was still in the lineup. Jonathan Ericsson was still in the lineup. A lot of old Red Wing favorites or not so favorites in the lineup that night. But Peter Mrazek returning to the crease of the Red Wings tonight. Projecting to see Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen for the Buffalo Sabres. They did not skate. They canceled their morning skate this morning, so no real lineup information. One thing to note for them is that JJ Peterka is a game time decision this evening. Then you got a 9 o'clock start between the Flames and the Canucks. It'll be Dustin Wolf, most likely going to see Kevin Lankinen again for the Vancouver Canucks. Karel Vejmelka gets a start for the Utah Hockey Club. Unsurprisingly, he is their guy right now. Lukas Dostal projected to get the start for the Ducks. Second half of back-to-back. Not a great performance last night. Really no idea who's going to start this game. Could be Dostal again. John Gibson's been banged up, but has been on the ice, so could be Gibson perhaps. Could also be Ville Husso, who served as Dostal's backup last night. Also was just recently acquired from the Detroit Red Wings. So any one of those three, it's probably a 33% chance for each one of them to get the start. I don't think anybody's all that interested in playing the Ducks goalie tonight, but something to keep in mind. Probably does have some effect one way or the other on the Utah Hockey Club. Then we got Joey Daccord projected to get the start for the Seattle Kraken. Jakub Dobeš gets the start for the Montreal Canadiens, second half of a back-to-back for them. Let's dive right in. We got the Detroit Red Wings hosting the Buffalo Sabres. The Red Wings need a win. Real bad. They've been playing pretty well as of late, to be honest with you. Like some bad games in between, but they've had multiple 40-shot performances, doubling up the other team in shots and still losing hockey games. They got absolutely goalied by Linus Ullmark the other night. Is tonight the night where they finally break through? I'm hoping so. They are minus 145 home favorites, 3.5 implied total for them, 2.9 implied total for the Buffalo Sabres. Matchups in this one. Going to see a lot of kind of just the third line against Tage Thompson and then just a bit of a mix elsewhere. The Sabres bottom 9 grades out pretty well defensively, so it doesn't have the best matchups overall for the Detroit Red Wings. Top 6, it's also the lowest event game of the night. But, I think that I've got interest in the Detroit Red Wings top 6 here. I thought that Marco Kasper looked really good in their last game against Ottawa. That line doesn't grade out all that well, but I do think that that's a line that's obviously got more than enough talent that can probably get things going eventually. They are $20,300 tonight, though, so I do think that is a bit of a tough salary to swallow. especially when you factor in the top line. It's just 17,300, and they project much better. They have better underlying metrics overall. But, I do think that the salary is interesting for Detroit because I think that this is a game in which they can score. I do think that the salary is going to help keep their ownership levels down a touch. Obviously, Larkin's seen a ton of ownership. Raymond's seen a decent chunk. But then you've got DeBrincat at 11% and Kane at just 5.4%. This is the number one power play advantage of the night. So I do think that power play stacking Detroit, obviously expensive, is a good route to go to get a little bit different tonight. They look like they're in a pretty good spot. 7th best power play over their last 10 games, going up against the 23rd ranked PK. The Red Wings, I tweeted out, I can't remember the exact numbers. I believe they're 2 for 17 on the power play in their last 6 games during the 6-game losing streak. So they need that to get going because they aren't scoring at 5v5, and this power play has been lethal all season long for the most part. So I like Detroit top 6 tonight. I'm probably only playing a sprinkle of the second line, more heavy on the first line, and a lot of power play stacks for me. I don't know if I'll get to the third line despite them having the best matchup overall. They just don't provide a whole lot of offense overall, but Craig Smith at minimum price. He's projected 14% ownership. Does have decent shot volume. JT Comp for 4,400 and Vladimir Tarasenko at 5,700. Fairly expensive again, but the matchup is pretty good against that Tage Thompson line, which we know struggles a little bit defensively. So let's start with the Detroit Red Wings. Where are you going with them tonight, Zach?
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting spot here tonight. Definitely liking Detroit 1 here. Detroit 2, I'm not feeling the greatest about, and largely for me, I think it's the pricing issue here. Alex DeBrincat up to $7,500. Patrick Kane up to 7,100. Those are pretty expensive price tags for guys who have been pretty okay as of late. I don't think they've been world burners or anything like that. I think DeBrincat's increase is a little more justified. I mean, over his last 20 games, 1.6 goals per hour of ice time, 12.1 shots per hour of ice time. Really tremendous floor that you're getting from him there. Patrick Kane, you're getting a bit of a floor there, 8.8 shots on goal per hour. The offense just hasn't quite been there to the same level in the goal scoring column as DeBrincat has been as of late here. But, given that it's a 4-game slate, given that it's kind of a funky one, I'll definitely be getting there tonight. I think I'm pretty much in agreement on the ownership here, 10, 15% Detroit 1, sprinkling a little bit of Detroit 2 full stack. And I'll probably sprinkle in maybe a little bit of Craig Smith tonight. 14% ownership at $2,500 for him. I think it just paints the picture of the pricing that really hasn't changed here from DraftKings whatsoever, at least according to them. I think he's a fine play. I'm not over the moon about it or anything like that. But it does seem like a pretty interesting spot, for Detroit as a whole. Elmer Soderblom up at $3,100 on that top line. I think he's an interesting play. Been talking about him for a while, been playing him for a little while here, largely in some depth roles. Waiting for him to pop might be the spot tonight for him to do so.
Yeah, that second line did have a really good night against the Senators. As I mentioned, I thought Casper had a good game. They outshot the Sens at 5v5, 13-1 when they were on the ice. By far, the Red Wings' most dominant line in that game. The price increase is going to keep the ownership down, but obviously it becomes a lot more difficult to build around them with that price hike. On the flip side, the Sabres kind of just doing Sabre-ish things. Some big games, mostly nothing. But Tage Thompson, as we know, we've talked about on this podcast or this show before, Tage Thompson loves playing against the Detroit Red Wings, just absolutely torches the Detroit Red Wings, gives them fits. JJ Peterka up to $6,900 again, game time decision tonight. Josh Norris, his price tag was under $5K. It's up to $6,600. Thompson at $8,100. Very expensive price tags in this game, but Buffalo 1 definitely seems like a line that you can get to tonight, just given the history for Tage Thompson against the Detroit Red Wings. I think that Josh Norris has fit in pretty nicely so far. For the Sabres, then obviously, you've got the fact that the Red Wings PK has been horrific all season long. Not a whole lot going for the Sabres power play either, but there is obviously going to be opportunities for the Sabres to score here. I feel, again, mostly better about that first line than I do kind of the rest of this lineup. I know that you like to play Alex Tuch a little bit more than I do. He's been hot. I understand it. Jason Zucker, $4,900 top power play unit. My only concern here is that there is potentially some line shuffling coming if JJ Peterka doesn't play. Luckily, it's the first game of the night, so you'll be able to change things accordingly. If Peterka's out, it obviously depends who moves up. If it's Zucker, the salary relief you get there is nice. Like, Peterka at $6,900 is a bit of a questionable play. Like, I love JJ Peterka, but $6,900 is getting up there. So I think, honestly, I'd be more interested in Buffalo 1 as a full stack if he's out. even though he brings a lot to that line, just because you get a little bit of salary relief. That's the most expensive line on the slate at 21,600 as it stands now. So definitely interested in Buffalo 1. The rest of this lineup, I'm not in love with. They have the best matchup overall as well. Not great matchups here for the bottom 9. Might mix it a little bit. Alex Tuck potentially as a one-off at $7K, maybe some Zucker one-off at $4,900. McLeod, I could care less about those. So what are your plans here with Buffalo?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to get over the field here on the Buffalo Sabres. Feels kind of like a gross thing to say out loud, but you mentioned Tage Thompson and how dynamic he's been. So it's kind of interesting with Tage. 18 games played against the Red Wings in his career, 11 goals and 21 points in those games. 6 of those points came in a single game back in the 2022-23 season, had a 3-goal, 3-assist night and an 8-3 win for the Buffalo Sabres. Beyond that, he's only had 3 other multi-point performances against the Detroit Red Wings. So I think there's definitely, an element of he has the ability to pop off, but, he's also had some quiet games too, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games against Detroit in his career without a point. I'm willing to take the swing here on Tage Thompson. He's been pretty good offensively as of late here. Last 20 games, 2.5 goals per hour of ice time, 10.8 shots on goal per hour, 3.9 points per hour as well. The big man has been dynamic here. The ownership's pretty low here on Buffalo 1, and I like him as a pivot play. They're grading out as the 5th best line to target overall in the slate, and they're seeing just 5% ownership. I can understand why the public's a little hesitant. Worst team in the Eastern Conference right now. Things aren't going great there in Buffalo, and the price tag's really expensive here. But again, this is a small slate. It's only 4 games. I can find ways to get different and get myself a little bit over the field here on Buffalo 1. I don't think it'll be crazy, but I'm comfortable getting up to 10%, maybe a little bit more with Tage Thompson one-offs. Buffalo 2, I think they're an interesting play here as well. Like, I don't mind getting to 7K Alex Tuck. Because as of late, he's been tremendous offensively as well, man. Like 1.7 goals per hour of ice time, 1.6 individual expected goals over his last 20, 9.4 shots on goal. I think he's a great one-off play. I don't mind the idea of mini stacking him with Jason Zucker either on that line. I agree about Ryan McLeod. Probably don't know how much I'm going to get at him at $4,500. That feels like a pretty gross price tag there. But you know what? An option to get yourself different there because he has been scoring well as of late. 1.4 goals per hour of ice time over his last 20 games.
Let's take a look at the team trend charts here before we move right along to game number 2. Detroit, as you see here, 1.37 goals scored below expected over their last 10 games at 5v5. So they certainly feel due, shooting just 5.7% during that stretch. The power play still has been solid. Good power play matchup, as we mentioned earlier. Both teams struggling, 2 of the worst defensive teams in terms of 5v5 and on the power play. If you combine the two, probably the 2 worst, maybe 2 of the 3 worst defensive teams on tonight's slate. So definitely has the, the ability to become a high-scoring game. Now, Zach, before we move on to game number 2, I want to skip ahead a little bit to the goalies here because, given what the Red Wings have been kind of going through and the insane shot volume, in that game against Ottawa alone, Alex DeBrincat had 13 shot attempts. Dylan Larkin, 8 shot attempts. Lucas Raymond, 8 shot attempts. They're firing everything on net. And if they continue to struggle to score, Luukkonen's going to be a strong goalie play tonight. He is just $7,300. He's projected for the lowest ownership of the night, which is pretty surprising. I'm not going to be playing a ton of UPL, but 15% maybe. There's a world in which the Sabres win this game 2-1 again, and UPL has 40 stops. The Red Wings they've been doing it to everybody. Yes, Linus Ullmark is a better goalie than UPL, but they got goalied by Elvis Merzlikins. So it is possible here. And then I actually have some interest in Peter Mrazek. I just think it's a huge game for him coming back to Detroit. I think it's super interesting. We've got the struggles that the Sabres have kind of gone through. Offensively, they've been better as of late at 5v5. The power play has struggled, though. So I'm somewhat interested in Mrazek. Maybe it's just me as a Red Wings fan trying to just be optimistic here that he could come back and be okay. But I think UPL is a very interesting goalie play tonight. What about you?
Yeah, I agree with UPL. I don't mind getting there. I don't mind mixing in a little bit of Mrazek here as well. Worth noting, as I am the Peter Mrazek whisperer, doesn't have a very great track record going up against Buffalo in his career. 16 games played, 7 wins, 1 shutout, mind you, but a 328 goals against average and an 885 save percentage. So more often than not, he's struggled, but I think he hit the nail on the head. I mean, this is a game that I really think is a pretty dang near coin flip in terms of what the potential outcome could be.
As Tom points out, they also got goalied by Veggie a couple games ago. Vejmelka's obviously played quite well as of late, but yeah, I mean, Merzlikins, Vejmelka, Allmark. Merzlikin's got him twice, really. Vejmelka, Allmark have all got to him, so it's possible that Luukkonen is a absolute fantastic play tonight. Calgary and Vancouver, this game looks pretty bleak. Don't really love this game overall. You take a look at the matchup. One thing that's worth mentioning here, specifically from Vancouver 1's perspective, Calgary 2, when you take a look at the whole numbers here, they grade out pretty well defensively, but on a smaller sample size with just Farabee, with just Backlund and just Coleman together. So they haven't had enough ice time as a trio to use in the charts, but they haven't been very good with Joel Farabee on their wing. They've given up 69 shot attempts against per 60, 3.2 expected goals against per 60, 33 scoring chances, and 15 high danger chances. So they've struggled defensively a little bit, Joel Farabee. So I do think that makes Vancouver 1 a little bit more interesting. Problem is Vancouver 1 does nothing offensively. The one thing that is also worth bringing up about this game is Quinn Hughes skated this morning. Some reporters suggesting it looked like a player that was planning on playing tonight, albeit was in a non-contact sweater. But this is about as must-win of a must-win as they come for the Vancouver Canucks. And if he's not suiting up tonight, he might as well not play the rest of the season. So I put him in the projections. He's projected for 0% ownership from Roto Grinders, which makes sense because I doubt he even plays. But he's worth monitoring tonight if you do plan on getting in on the Vancouver Canucks. Besser and Pettersson are together. They're also together on that top power play unit if you want to kind of go that route. Dustin Wolf has just been so good this year. This is a team that's pretty good defensively. Let's take a look here at the numbers as a whole. They continue to be pretty good defensively. The Canucks just not scoring at all. Both PKs have been good. I just don't really have much interest in this game at all. Like, I have a hard time finding interest anywhere. The Flames penalty kill, our power play has been anemic. The Canucks, I mean, let's just take a look at the power play. It is the 27th ranked power play against number 1 PK. No, thank you. I feel like you probably have a little bit more interest in the Flames than I do because you kind of always do. So I guess talk me into it.
I guess I can try. Calgary 2 projects well tonight. I mean, I don't know. I agree with you, man. I don't feel great about playing the Calgary Flames, which is kind of ironic because I have Calgary 2, a mini stack of Backlund and Coleman in our TFO head-to-head tonight. Albeit I was a little bit rushed building that lineup. I couldn't quite find anything else that fit money-wise, but I digress. I mean, I guess I can get there a little bit on Calgary, but there is no way I'm getting to 19% Calgary 1 tonight, or 10% Calgary 2, 5% Calgary 5, Calgary 3. It feels gross. I mean, you look at Joel Farabee and Morgan Frost. I mean, they've been really disappointing, I think, since arriving in Calgary. I mean, I understand it's more of a long-term play for the Calgary Flames in terms of picking these guys up. I just don't know if I see a world where Calgary does enough to break the slate or to really open it up, to the top end lineups. I guess the saving grace for both sides in this game is that there's, pretty affordable players on either side of it. The most expensive player in this game from the forward ranks is Nazem Kadri at $6,300. I think I'll get a little bit of exposure to Kadri there. Solid floor, 9.7 shots on goal per hour of ice time. He's scoring at an okay rate, putting up points at an okay rate. But I don't know, man. It feels pretty bleak on this Calgary side. And I mean, this Vancouver side to me is just as gross. I think I'm comfortable taking some dart throws, maybe on
probably grosser.
Pardon me?
Probably grosser, honestly.
Probably grosser, yeah. I mean, I guess you can say, Elias Pettersson has scored a couple of goals as of late, which I guess is kind of cool, but even still, it's just not been going great there. Vancouver 3 could be an interesting play. I mean, they're grading out 14th best on the slate overall here. Strong matchup. The line stats are pretty good, but it's not like these guys have really done a whole lot in their last 20 games either. I don't know, man. It's a game to me that I'm definitely going to be under the field on overall.
Yeah, I mean, I showed the projections there. what you're talking, and Nazem Kadri is the highest projected owned forward on the slate. Matt Coronado, I kind of get it just because I do agree that they're probably a little bit underpriced. Like when you look at the pricing of Detroit and then you look at the pricing of Calgary, it's like, okay, don't really get it. But the only line that I've really ever played for Vancouver over like the last few months is the Filipino line. That's probably, if I had to play Vancouver tonight, the line that I would go back to again tonight. They grade out horrifically, but they're $13,900. They're seeing no ownership. I feel like you got a decent ceiling with DeBrusk, Hedl, and Lekramacky. So the line that I would probably take a swing on, because Hedl's the one guy that I feel like okay about. Leads the team in terms of shots on goal over the last 10 games. Jake DeBrusk is third during that stretch. If you take a look at individual expected goals, DeBrusk leads the way. Filipino is second. So that duo would be the one. Maybe throw in Lekramacky, but at 4K, I don't even really care that much about that play either. So if I was playing Vancouver, it would probably be through Vancouver 2. Their matchup's okay. They're going to see a lot of Calgary 3. Calgary 3 basically average defensively on tonight's slate. So that would be the route I would go with Vancouver if I had to pick one. Again, Calgary, I'll probably get to a little bit of the top 6, but there, like you said, there's just no way I'm meeting the field there. Like, no. I don't understand. Like Kadri and Coronado, I think their price tags are pretty reasonable. Kadri obviously has a great floor, as you mentioned. He's averaging 3.4 shots on goal per game over his last 10 games. Coronado averaging just 1.7, though. He has just 2 goals, 1 assist in his last 10 games. Like, it's just a gross game that I don't have that much interest in. Going back to Vancouver again, though, like we know, we've talked about it a ton on this show this year. Dustin Wolf, absolute dog on home ice. He's been incredible. He's been lights out as of late. So it's just so hard to look at this game and be like, yeah, let's target this one. Just a reminder of how good Dustin Wolf is on home ice versus the road. On home ice, he's 15-6-2 with a 2.17 goals against average, 928 save percentage. That balloons to a 305 goals against average and an 894 save percentage on the road. One other thing, though, Kevin Lankinen getting the start again tonight. A little surprising, but he's also been incredible against the Flames this year. Super good. Trying to pull up the numbers here. He is 1-1 with a 153 goals against average and a 947 save percentage in 2 games against the Flames this year. So, you got anything else to add on that one?
No, not really. I was just going to throw those numbers out. I mean, feels like a good game to bet the under. I mean, I don't know, man. It does feel really gross to me. This ownership on Calgary, I just cannot get behind it tonight.
Yeah. So the under is 5.5 minus 123. By far the lowest total on the night. And Calgary is chalk. I can't justify it. Let's get to game number 3, Utah and Anaheim. Now this game, going to see a boatload of ownership on the Utah side of things. So we mentioned yesterday, like, I want to play the Capitals against Anaheim, who isn't very good defensively whatsoever. 2.98 expected goals against per 60 at 5v5. Penalty kills a nightmare. We just didn't know how to really go about it. Given those line combinations. That's on us. Tonight, it's right there in front of you. Top 6 of Utah is extremely good. Let's get to the stacks. Number 1, number 2. It's right there. They're not even expensive. Like, I will be double the field on Utah if this is the case. And way under the field on Calgary. It's just such a better spot, and they're seeing fairly similar ownership. So, 18,500 for the top line. Sign me up. 15,500 for the second line. Sign me up. I mentioned the other day, I'm even going to get to the third line. They have pretty good underlying metrics. They're super cheap. If you're looking for a line to play with, like these super expensive lines, like Detroit, like Buffalo, I don't mind getting to Utah 3 either. The matchup for them, quite good. Very good for the top line, though. They're going to be the line that sees the most of the Ryan Strome line. These metrics for the Ducks are so bad. The Ryan Strome line is the worst defensive line that the Ducks have, but they're all bad. So matchups are kind of just, they're all going to be good. So the top 9 here for Utah, very good offensive metrics across the board. These third line metrics are astounding. Like, given kind of the names that are on that line, super, super impressive. So I'll mix them in a little bit as well. But, man, I'm going to be just stuffing Utah 1 and Utah 2 in my lineups tonight and finding leverage there because I am not playing the Flames.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. You talk about some soft pricing on the Calgary Flames as to maybe a reason why, the field is getting there. I think the pricing here on the Utah side of things is equally as soft. I have no issue getting to this ownership and being over the field on it. 20-25% Utah 1, 15-20% Utah 2. It's going to be pretty easy for me to get to tonight because, again, these prices are not super restrictive at all here. Barrett Hayton at just $4,900. The guy's been on fire as of late. Great shot volume, 9.4 shots on goal per hour, 1.5 goals per hour of ice time, 1.8 individual expected goals per hour for Hayton over his last 20 games. He's been lights out, man. Like getting a lot of chances, capitalizing on them. Dylan Guenther too. He's been just incredible, right back to where he was very early on this season. Maybe a little bit more pause on Utah 1, just because we haven't really seen Logan Cooley or Nick Schmaltz really crushing it in terms of their offense. They've been consistent, 2.2 points per hour for Cooley, 2.5 for Schmaltz over their last 20 games played. And I think for me, that's a reason why I'm leaning a little bit more towards playing Utah 2. Again, as we can see here, Utah 1 is seeing 30% of the ice time, but Utah 2, man, like their underlying metrics are just a good amount stronger, and they're actually due for some more offense here. I'd imagine that's likely because of Alex Kerfoot, 0.2 goals per hour over his last 20 games here. But again, Kerfoot's only $3,400 tonight, garnering 10% ownership. I'll be well over the field there. And if he's able to pot one and start to regress towards the mean, could be a big night here for this Utah Hockey Club.
Taking a look at the power play, they have the 7th ranked power play advantage tonight. The Ducks PK has been pretty decent over the last 10 games, but I showed it here in the team trends that they're giving up a lot. They've done a good job kind of limiting the chances, but still giving up a ton of goals against on the PK. The save percentage, the goaltending has been pretty poor. So I'm not that worried about the Utah power play advantage. And obviously, liking both Utah 1 and Utah 2, it makes a lot of sense to just play that power play. You got 2 guys from each. You got Sergachev on there as well. Again, if you're playing Utah 3, you got McBain and Krause down there as well. And that's on that second power play unit with Sean Dursey. So they get a little bit of power play time as well. So yeah, totally in love with Utah tonight without question. And like I kind of ignored it. They have the best, tied with the Red Wings for the most expected goals for per 60 at 5v5. The second best power play on tonight's slate. Like this is an offense that's clicking in a really good matchup. And then don't even get me started on if Ville Husso gets the start or even John Gibson hasn't been great. So, and Dostal on the side, there's just no real guy that obviously scares me. Dostal is going to have a back-to-back. Such a good matchup for Utah, such a better matchup than what the Flames have, and seeing, less ownership, which doesn't make sense. I'm going to be stunned if the ownership actually comes out the way it's projected. I think that you're going to see Utah way higher owned, which hopefully not, because I'm going to be in that boat, but I'd like some leverage there. But yeah, it's a great play. On the Duck side of things, I mean, Utah's been so good defensively. Their penalty kill sucks, but I just don't know if I'm going to get there on the Ducks. The matchups here are pretty bleak across the board. The top line would be the one that I would probably play. They continue to just have really, really solid numbers. I might mix in a little bit of Olin Zellweger on that top power play unit. Was he still there last night? He was. So, yeah, maybe mix in some Zellweger on the power play, given how bad the penalty kill has been for Utah, but I'm probably not stacking a ton of Ducks tonight. Are you planning on it?
No, I don't think I'm going to get to a ton of the Ducks here. I mean, I think 10% on that top line is fair. I'll probably get there. They do have the 7th best 7th best score on the slate here. So I think there's a reason to get to them a little bit here. These depth lines feel pretty gross, but I might throw a couple of darts on Anaheim 2 and 3 and just kind of hope that, this is a high scoring game. The pricing feels high on the rest of this Ducks lineup beyond the top line. And that's the part that I kind of have issue with, because when you look at that third line, for example, $14,900 to full stack them, it's only $200 more to get to the top line of the Anaheim Ducks. So, they're going to give you a much better floor. And thanks to guys like Frank Vetrano's shot volume, Ryan Strome, he's been productive as of late as well here too. Troy Terry's probably due for some goals here to come at some point. So, I think this is a game that has the possibility of being a higher scoring one where Anaheim gets involved. it's just kind of hard to nail down anything on this second and third line. You talked about the heater that this third line is on. They're really due to cool off here pretty quickly. And at their price points, I just don't know if I can justify getting there. I guess the one saving grace, if you do want to get to that third line of the Ducks, Cutter Gauthier over his last 20 games, 11.2 shots on goal per hour, playing just 14 minutes a night. And Mason McTavish, 1.9 goals per hour over his last 28.2 shots, playing about 18 minutes a night too. So I think there's, a realm of possibilities here where the Ducks are involved in the game offensively. I just don't know if I love it or anything like that. Again, I'll get some exposure to that top line, sprinkle in a little bit of that third line, maybe 5% of the second line, but it feels pretty tough to really justify getting to a lot of Anaheim here tonight.
These two teams have met twice this year. Both games were 5-4. Leo Carlsson had a big game in the one game, and in the second game, it was mostly the Cutter Gauthier third line. So Mason McTavish has had some success against Utah so far this season. The big dogs on the Utah side of things have had success against the Ducks this season. Clayton Keller had a 4-point night earlier in the season against them. So yeah, I'll probably mix in a little bit of Anaheim. That top line still is going to be the one that garners most of my attention. I do think the second line is probably a little bit underpriced. Leo Carlsson just 4K, literally under 1% owned. Alex Lawrence had some decent shot volume lately, 4,500. I'm looking for salary relief here from the Ducks, not paying up for Mason McTavish and Cutter Gauthier, as good as they've been. It is a bit of a heater that's due to cool off. The underlying metrics are solid enough to kind of consider them, but the matchup obviously not great. On the second half of back-to-back, I just don't really see the Ducks scoring a lot of goals tonight, unfortunately. So the top line is the one that really does a lot of the damage, and that's kind of the route that I'll probably end up going. Their power play does grade out second best tonight just because the Utah PK has been so horrific. So if you want to take a look again at the power play, it's mostly that top line with Olin Zellweger. So, I don't mind Zellweger as a one-off. Mostly that's probably the majority of my exposure here from the Duck side of things tonight. Maybe a little Alex Killorn up on that top power play unit. If you want to mix in the second power play unit, Carlsson and Leo Carlsson, Carlsson and Zegras correlate there. Also McTavish and Sam Colangelo from the third line. So there's a route. I think it's going to have to come through the power play more than anything for the Ducks tonight. Any final thoughts on this one before we move to game number 4?
No, let's move it along.
Seattle hosts the Montreal Canadiens. The Seattle Kraken are -140 home favorites, 3.4 implied total, 2.9 implied total for the Canadiens. Let's take a look at the big board here. Both. Interestingly enough, the Kraken probably slightly better defensively, but the goaltending's just been horrific. Where complete opposite for the Canadiens. Not the best defensive team, but the goaltending's been outstanding at 5v5. Shooting 25% of the power play for the Canadiens as of late. Power play advantages in this one, not a whole lot to write home about. The Canadiens 19th best power play up against 26th ranked PK is third best overall tonight. Seattle just awful on the power play. Matchup wise, really good matchups in the Seattle side of things. Obviously, we just talked about how the Canadiens are, not great defensively at 5v5. So obviously open things up for Seattle, but the Seattle team, man, just doesn't generate anything at 5v5. Their power play stinks. It's hard to confidently stack the Kraken. The top line and the second line have been the best offensively as of late. So the second line is, I can't search them for some reason. That is the St. Louis Blues. Stand with me. Wright, McCann, Burakovsky. So that was kind of formerly the third line is now the second line. Schwartz, Beniers, Kakko remains the top line. So, I don't know. Seattle 1 grades out fourth best at $14,000. I'm going to get there. They're just too cheap. I don't feel great about their ceiling, but they're fine. Seattle 2 is 14,900. So again, this isn't a game that I love, but there's not a lot of great options on tonight's slate outside of the Detroit Red Wings, maybe a little bit of Buffalo and Utah. So Seattle kind of feels like you have to play them just because they're some of the only value on the entire slate. So I'll throw it to you. I want to get your feelings on Seattle first. I'm going to look up some of their numbers here while we do so.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty interesting spot here for Seattle. The implied total is strong for them, projected for 3.4 goals. The matchups are all grading out really well here. The game seems to have a decent pace score. The underlying numbers for that top 6 are pretty solid, all things considering. I think I'm going to get there. I don't think I'm going to get there a ton. 16, 17% on that top line feels like a little bit much to me. I'm probably going to come in a little under the field on that. And I'm okay with sprinkling in a little bit of this second and this third line as well here. I don't hate the idea, but again, when you look at the last 10 games for these Seattle Kraken, 2.33 expected goals per hour. That is the second worst on this slate tonight, behind only the Calgary Flames, ahead of only the Calgary Flames. So, I don't think I can get there to the field. I'm okay getting there with some dart throws. A couple of interesting names. Eli Tolvanen on Seattle 3 has been hot lately. 1.4 goals per hour of ice time over his last 20, 8.0 shots on goal per hour, 3 goals and 6 points in 6 games in his career against the Montreal Canadiens. So I don't mind getting a dart throw down there. Shane Wright continuing to be on a bit of a heater here as of late. 1.5 goals per hour of ice time. There is just no shot volume from him, but he's scoring when he's shooting the puck. So I don't hate the idea there. I'm okay sprinkling in a little bit of this top line. I don't feel great about it, but the matchups are strong. The line stats are strong for this Kraken side of things. So I'm okay getting there, I think, a little bit. But again, like I said, I don't think I can get to 17% of this top line for the Kraken. I just like that Utah game and that Utah side so much more here.
Yeah, like the only way I get to like 16, 20% of Utah or Seattle one is just because they are so cheap. There's not a lot of shot volume to speak of on that line either. Jaden Schwartz shoots a decent amount, but it's only like 2.6 shots per game over his last 10. Matty Beniers 1.8, Capo Caco 1.8. So not great floors there. None of them have been really all that productive as of late, about 0.5 point per game across the board. As you mentioned, Shane Wright kind of leading the way, but just no shot volume whatsoever from him or Andre Burakovsky. On the flip side, Jared McCann does shoot the puck, and he's the one guy that you can rely on to have a floor here. And like Jared McCann and the defensemen are the players that intrigue me the most from the Seattle side of things. The problem is you're kind of paying up for them, right? McCann 6K. The defensemen, they all grade out super well. Vince Dunn, $5,200. Love that price tag for him. Brandon Montour, $6,300, a little bit more expensive, but like I think you can justify it. These are the guys that have been really their best players as of late, and the guys that have the majority of the DraftKings points and the shot volume. And it's just harder to trust guys like Shane Wright to continue heaters when he's just not shooting enough. So for me, it's mostly gonna, I will mix those Shane Wrights and that top line in, but I have a lot more interest in McCann and the defenseman here from the Seattle side of things tonight, if I'm being honest. So McCann coming in at just 6.6% feels like one of the better one-off plays tonight. I think he's pretty interesting, so I'll be getting to some there. And then that top line is just way too cheap. So mixing them in because they're cheap, and that's it. Montreal, they don't have a whole lot of offense outside of that top line. Right now, they're pretty banged up with no Patrick Laine, although he is a game time decision tonight, could potentially return this evening, but we won't know until probably what time does this game start? 10:30. Yeah, probably not going to know until 10. So if you want to build some Patrick Laine in to get some super low on Patrick Laine, I think it's a decent way to get different if he does end up playing, because you just got to leave yourself with good pivot options if he doesn't play. Just trying to pull up their game last night. This top line was dominant. 26 shot attempts in 13 minutes against the Canucks. Simply outstanding stuff. I'll be getting back to them really with no hesitation. They are very, very good. They're by far this team's best line. And the matchup for them tonight isn't great. They're going to see a lot of that Shane Wright line, maybe a little bit of that Stevenson line. Kind of a mixed bag, some good, some bad here with Seattle. But as I mentioned, you pull up their numbers, pretty good in terms of individual or expected goals against, but the goaltending is pretty brutal. So I don't think that even you, Zach, who I respect your opinion a lot, can even talk me into the depth of the Montreal Canadiens tonight.
Yeah, it's pretty tough to get to the depth pieces here. Really hasn't been a whole lot as of late. I mean, Brendan Gallagher is the guy that I think is the only person I could play with any confidence, even though I don't really have a whole ton of confidence in playing Brendan Gallagher. $4,400 projected for 2.7% ownership, 8.6 shots on goal per hour of ice time, 1.1 goals per hour over his last 20. What's interesting is 1.6 individual expected goals. So he's due for some more goals to come here. That's another representation of the line stats as a whole there for Montreal 3. Rosie here, she's very interested in the Montreal Canadiens tonight, and mainly around that top line, just like I am here. These three guys have been on an absolute tear as of late. You look at the damage that they were able to do last night. The price is a little bit tough to get there. I mean, $20,100. I can understand why there's not a ton of people that are getting there. But at only 10% ownership here, going up against the Seattle team that has just really kind of struggled here as of late. No goaltending whatsoever to speak of for the Kraken. So I'm okay with getting over the field here on Montreal 1. And I think a lot of the way that I'm going to get over the field is just by playing, more Uri Slafkovsky. I mean, he's projecting for just 4% ownership here tonight. 1.2 goals per hour over his last 20 games, 7.0 shots on goal per hour. I think what's interesting is he's looking a little bit more confident out there right now for Montreal. So I don't mind getting there at all on this Habs top line. The depth pieces probably won't get there very much. If I need some salary savings, I might consider like an Alex Newhook Gallagher mini stack. Maybe if I'm really needing to save some money, getting down to like a Dvorak Anderson mini stack, but I don't even feel great about that. The one saving grace there, I suppose, Josh Anderson, 7 games played against the Kraken in his career, 3 goals and 4 points. So he's had a little bit of production against them in the past at the very least.
Yeah, Uri Slafkovsky has definitely looked a lot more like the player in the second half of the season of his rookie year, where he was great in the second half. So this is kind of nothing new for him. Nearly 3 shots on goal per game, 2.9 to be exact, since the break. So the shot volume has skyrocketed for him, which makes him a lot more of a strong DFS play. 4 goals, 4 assists, 8 points in 8 games during or since the break. Nick Suzuki is just red hot. 15 points in his last 10 games. He's been awesome. 6 goals in his last 10 games for Cole Caulfield. That line has just been so good. They all have pretty good shot volume. Cole Caulfield, obviously the strongest, but you're getting pretty good shot volume out of Suzuki. You're getting pretty good shot volume out of Slafkovsky. Lane Hudson continues to be an absolute dynamic weapon on the blue line. So yeah, I love this top line. I love Hudson. I don't know how much Montreal I'm going to get to. I do agree with you a little bit on Brendan Gallagher. The price tag, I like him more when he's like $3,300. $4,400 seems a bit more difficult, but he does have good shot volume. His floor is fine. He had 6 shot attempts, including 3 on net last night. Led the way in terms of individual expected goals for the Habs last night. In terms of their last 10 games, he is 5th on the team in terms of individual expected goals for averaging just 1.7 shots per game, which is a little bit lower than kind of normal for Brendan Gallagher. But so yeah, most of the top line here for me. Any final thoughts on this one before we get to the defensemen, goalies, and our hat trick picks?
No, let's move it along.
Here we go to the defensemen. So already mentioned a couple. Guys really like Vince Dunn, looks great at $5,200. Jackson Lacombe, he's been a little bit quieter as of late, but still plays a ton of minutes. I don't like him quite as much as I used to when he's on that top power play unit. I feel really good about Olin Zellweger on that top power play unit, just so cheap. Actually, wow, he's come up to $4,500 tonight. Don't like him as much anymore. He was $3,100 yesterday. Yeah, pricing's the same. I'll still probably mix in some Zellweger just because he's not going to see much ownership at that price point. And I do think that power play unit has a pretty decent matchup. But Lacombe does a little bit of everything. Projected for 26 minutes at $4,800. I think that's fine. Moritz Seider's okay. I think obviously at 6,600, I like that matchup a lot. A lot of these Utah guys are just super cheap. Like I love Dursey at 4,500. If you want to mix in some Cole, some Kesselring, some Mata, like all those guys will probably get you some decent value. If you need some salary savings, their floors obviously aren't great, but if Utah bangs home 6 tonight, there's going to be some random assists to go around. To be honest with you, not a lot of great value options on the blue line tonight. Adam Larson at 3,900, Matthias Samuelsson 3,400 is a shot block machine. If Detroit's going to fire 50 shots on net again, Samuelsson's probably going to hit the shot block bonus in the first period. Who do you like, Zach? This is gross.
Yeah, it's kind of tough. I don't mind punting off on some of the defensemen here tonight. Like I think you mentioned Samuelsson. That's a great play to me at $3,400. Connor Clifton, a guy, $2,800, good block volume, 5.2 per hour of ice time. One name that's kind of jumping out to me as a solid value play is Michael Kesselring. He doesn't play the most minutes. He's averaging about 17 minutes in all situations this season. 0.4 goals per hour over his last 20. It's right around average for a defenseman. 1.4 points per hour. The one nice thing about him is he's got really good shot volume, 7.3 shots on goal per hour. 3 games played against the Ducks in his career. Got a goal and an assist. So he's put up some points that way. He's the guy who plays a lot with Utah too, so you can mix him into your stacks there. I mean, literally nobody is playing him at $3,100, so I have no issue getting there. I also kind of like the idea of just paying up for some of these defensemen tonight. Like Vince Dunn at $5,200 feels too cheap there. Guy plays a lot of minutes and shoots a lot of pucks. Same thing with Brandon Montour. Same kind of idea, although he's $1,100 more expensive. Sergachev, he looks like he's a great play. You can probably talk me into playing Mackenzie Weegar tonight on the Calgary Flames side of things. I do agree it does feel like a bit of a tough slate here in terms of the blue liners. So I think I'm either kind of going stars or scrubs with the blue liners tonight for me.
Aaron Rasmus says Alex Carrier at $4,200. Yeah, he's just does a little bit of everything, right? The shot volume's pretty solid. I've always liked Carrier as a punt since going back to when he was with Nashville. The shot volume is okay, basically like a shot-ish per game. But the block volume is really what you're paying for. And, second half of back-to-back, they might not have quite as much of the puck tonight. I do, maybe not the best matchup against Seattle in terms of block volume, but he's still a guy that usually gets there. And there's not a lot of great kind of low $4,000, a high $3,000 defenseman tonight to choose from. So can justify some expensive D with the fours being mostly cheap. Yeah, I agree. That's kind of the route that I'm going. Going to have a ton of, these Sergachevs, Dunn, Durzees, Siders, like, those are going to be the guys, and ownership says that too, right? Like it's where people are landing in terms of ownership as well. So, let's move on to the goalies. Between the pipes, Dustin Wolf projects as the number 1 goalie tonight. Not overly surprising, given the quality of the matchup. I think that both him and Kevin Lankinen are strong goalie plays tonight. I like Wolf more, but Lankinen at $600 cheaper feels just as good. So I like both of them in that game. Super low scoring game. I already said I'm not going to have a lot of exposure to that game. So I'm going to have a lot of exposure to these goalies. But Dustin Wolf looks like a very strong play. Vejmelka, same thing. Most expensive, also the highest owned, but also the highest implied win percentage tonight. Also the lowest shot volume. So maybe not the highest ceiling of Vejmelka, but definitely trying to just lock up a W with him feels okay. I don't know how much I'm going to get to Vejmelka when Wolf is 8K though. So I certainly won't have him as my highest owned goalie of the slate. Same thing with Peter Mrazek. I think Wolf's just a better play. I'll mix in Mrazek just to get different. I don't really like Joey Daccord. I meant to actually bring up Joey Daccord's numbers since the break. And again, he's unconfirmed. And Phil Grubauer looked really good in his first game back. I don't know if they go back to him tonight or not. But if they do, I don't know how many times he can just mix in good games in a row. It's been very few and far between. But Joey Daccord's last 5, 1-4 with an .852 save percentage. He's given up at least 3 goals in every single one of those games. He's given up at least 4 goals in 3 of 5. It's been awful. Jakub Dobish, definitely mixing him in. He's been awesome. Obviously, he's come down to earth a little bit, but mixing him in. So most of my exposure is going to be Wolf, Lankinen, Dobish, and then obviously UPL, and just, I have to play some UPL because if the Red Wings get 50 shots and lose again, I'm going to freak out. So I at least need to have some UPL in my lineups. He seems like a fine play. So that's just it's what we call an emotional hedge. Zach, who are you playing tonight?
That's right. I was just going to call it that. I mean, I think that's a great move for you here tonight, Brock. Dustin Wolf is probably my favorite play in the crease. Oh, interesting there. Paterka out tonight and Kulich back in.
I imagine Kulich will just slide up on that top line. I imagine Kulich will just slide up onto that top line. Yeah, I don't think that they're going to mess around too much. He's $4,600 and Paterka was $6,600 or $6,900. So I don't want to do the math. I'm just going to do it like this. They're 19,300 if he plays there. I feel a lot better about that. But yeah, that would be my projection. I would build like that if, and then obviously it's the first one, so you'll have time to pivot. I think the other option is, Jason Zucker, as I mentioned earlier. But sorry to cut you off. Who are your goalie plays tonight?
No, that's okay. That's some big news right there. Dustin Wolf, I think, is probably my favorite play tonight on the slate for the goaltenders. I mean, 8K is a nice price point for him there. Vancouver's been terrible offensively. Dustin Wolf is just an absolute dog at home. Just don't get him away from the Calgary Saddle. Don't look at his numbers away from Calgary because they are bleak. One game played against the Canucks so far in his career was a win. Only allowed one goal, 958 save percentage. So he was awesome. Beyond that, probably just going to be a sprinkling of everybody else. Like, I think Vamelko's a great play at $8,300. So does the field. I mean, they're at 20% on him here tonight. That's a pretty high number. Truth of the matter is Vamelka has actually really struggled against Anaheim in his career. 4 games played, 1 win, 347 goals against average, and an 892 save percentage. He's been tremendous this year, but I mean, he's still a young goaltender. Still going to have some good games, going to have some bad games for him. Jakub Dobish, I mean, $7,500 for him. I can get behind that for sure tonight on this slate. Probably just a spattering of everybody else here. Kevin Lankinen, I think, at $7,400 is also a pretty solid play here.
What percentage of games this season do you think the Vancouver Canucks have scored 1 or fewer goals?
1 or fewer? Let's say, oh man, I think it's going to be a stupidly high number. Let's go with 34%.
Okay, it's not quite that bad, but 20% seems outrageous still. 20.3%. They've scored 1 or fewer goals in 13 games this season. They suck.
Just
man, their offense was so explosive last year. It's insane. Okay, let's get to our hat trick pick challenge. I won yesterday's head-to-head. It was not a pretty one, but I will take it so I can go first. If you want to participate in today's hat trick pick challenge, just comment your hat trick pick in the comment section of the video on YouTube, not the live chat. And we gave away $25, even though somebody got it wrong yesterday. So if a player scores a hat trick tonight and nobody picks him, we will raffle it off to anybody that submitted a hat trick pick. And if your player scores, we give you a $50 gift card to nationgear.ca. So my hat trick pick tonight, I mean, I'm going with Utah. They're gonna just mop the floor with the Ducks tonight. I'm going Dylan Guenther.
Love it. I'm going to go with Tage Thompson, see if he can continue to break slates wide open. One other thing that I forgot to talk about, Brock, during the defensemen, when we were talking about them, Quinn Hughes at $6,400. I think it's an interesting play here tonight.
For sure.
I'm going to be building around him in some of my lineups. And I think the reason that I'm going to do that is because there's some really easy pivot options. That's the second game of the night. There's guys that you can pivot to that are cheaper than him. Brandon Montour, Mackenzie Weegar, Sergachev, Vince Dunn. Just something to kind of keep in mind here as this night progresses. Yeah,
and he's obviously going to be a great play. I mean, not a great play, but a solid play. If he's in the lineup tonight. So my hattie pick is Yuri Kulich. Live chat, Beebs. You should know better. Put it in the other comment section, please. Okay, did you give a hat trick pick?
Yeah, Tage.
Makes sense. Okay, let's get to today's daily face-off, our head-to-head lineup challenge. I am 37-35 on the season now. I went with the Utah Onslaught in the head-to-head tonight. Hayton, Cooley, Guenther, Schmaltz, Sergachev, Keller all made the lineup. Lankin in between the pipes, and then I had to go cheap options. Obviously, Elmer Soderblom, $3,100 fits the bill. So does Matthias Samuelsson. Pretty easy lineup to go through tonight.
I'm playing Calgary too, and I am terrified. I'm ready to get hurt tonight, ready to lose my third one in a row. I wanted to build around Dustin Wolf in the crease. When I build my lineups, I typically start with the main stack that I'm targeting, see if there's a defenseman that correlates, usually get a mini stack in there, and then I'll throw my goaltender. And I went the other way today. I was like, I know that I want Dustin Wolf in the crease tonight. So we're going with him. I wanted to get some exposure to Buffalo here with how low owned Tage Thompson is. So $8,100 for him. Got Rasmus Dahlin in there as well, who's also been great against Detroit in his career. 21 games played, 4 goals and 20 points for him. Obviously, I had to mix some Utah in here. I talked about liking Utah 2 a little bit more than that top line, so threw them in there. And then, boy, I was just trying to find some guys that could work in the lines here. So welcome to the team, Mikael Backlund and Blake Coleman. Joel Hanley at $2,700. I needed a cheap defense to start on. And he's the guy that I chose because over his last 20 games, 7.1 block shots per hour of ice time. Played on the top pair, projected to see about 21 minutes of ice time tonight. So hopefully he can lock into something for me here.
A lot of Calgary Flames in that lineup. Okay, I want to give a quick job to the chat. It doesn't have to be today, but over the next couple of weeks, we have 25-ish I would say, shows left this season. As I showed you there, 37 and 35 on the season. We have been trying to come up with a punishment for the guy who loses the head-to-head for the season. We haven't been able to come up with anything good. So we want some ideas from the chat over the next, if you think of something funny over the next couple days, over the next few shows, drop it in the chat. We're going to do something. The loser's going to have to do something live on our last show of the season. So if you got any fun ideas, bring them up. And it's a good time for me to bring this up as I have a 37 and 35 lead. But thanks, as always, to our friends at rotogrinders.com for providing projected ownership for today's show. If you want to get $20 off your first month of RotoGrinders Premium, you can do so by clicking the link in the description of the video on YouTube. Also in the description of the video is the link to our DFO DFS Discord. We've had some massive winners in that Discord as of late, and it's just a community that continues to grow each day. We provide all the late-breaking news. So if Quinn Hughes is in tonight, we'll let you know right away. That way you never miss a thing. I think that's everything. And make sure you smash the like button. Over 1,000 people watching right now. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll see you guys back here tomorrow. And, before we go, do you like Detroit 1 or Detroit 2 better? I like Detroit 1. Just they're cheaper.
Yeah, I'm echoing that.
But I like Detroit 2 a lot. Like I said, they had a great game the other night. I liked what Casper looked like down the middle. I think that the price tag is going to keep them lower owned than probably even projected. So I'm mixing them into. They're very close to me. Don't get too cute to close out Zach. Oilers jersey for Brock. Okay. Wings for Zach. That's not a bad one. It's a good start. Keep those ideas flowing over the next couple of weeks. We'll see you guys back here tomorrow. Until then, cheers.